Thank you for singing Margaritaville earlier on the show.
Let's talk about Florence Welch, huh?
I mean, can we
Singing,
just talk about that?
Doing Margaritaville? Come on, please.
When Jimmy Buffett was hospitalized in May 2023, fans thought it was just a brief health scare. He even joked about aging, promising to get back on stage soon. But behind that trademark smile, something far more serious was unfolding. Months later, the world lost the man who made Margaritaville more than just a song. It was a way of life. Now, after months of silence, the official autopsy has been released. And what it reveals about Buffett's final days, his illness, the pain he endured, and the truth he kept hidden from fans, paints a heartbreaking picture few ever expected. The Nashville dream that crashed hard. Jimmy Buffett's story began in Pascagoula, Mississippi, though he spent most of his childhood just down the coast in Mobile, Alabama, the son of a sailing ship captain. His upbringing was about as southern and traditional as it gets. He went to parochial school, served as an altar boy, played trombone in the band, and even cheered on the sidelines as a school cheerleader. From early on, people noticed his energy. He was relentlessly upbeat. As author Timothy White once said, Buffett could have been any kid growing up in middle-class America. After high school, life took a few unexpected turns. To dodge the Vietnam War draft, he enrolled at Auburn University. But college life didn't quite stick. He flunked out, made a brief stop at a junior college in Mississippi, and eventually landed at the University of Southern Mississippi. That move turned out to be a game changer. It put him close to New Orleans, where the real party began. Officially, he was a student, but in reality, he was soaking up the music scene, taking just a couple of classes a week and spending most of his time in the Big Easy. Buffett started out small, playing in pizza joints and local bars across Mississippi, then took his music to the streets, literally. In New Orleans, he'd perform for tips on street corners, entertaining whoever happened to pass by. But that chapter wasn't all smooth sailing. He got tangled up with eschatrol, a prescription amphetamine, and was dating a call girl at the time. Once he wrapped up his studies at Southern Miss and flunked his draft physical, he was finally free to chase his musical dreams full-time. He proposed to Margie Washachek, a beauty queen and former Miss USS Alabama, and the two moved back to Alabama together. But Buffett quickly realized he wouldn't make it big staying there, so he set his sights on Nashville. The move didn't go as planned. Nashville wasn't exactly rolling out the red carpet for a laid-back dreamer who didn't want to write cookie-cutter country songs. He took a day job at Billboard magazine just to stay afloat, but at night he was still chasing the music, playing anti-war rallies in his fringe jacket, singing for the hippies, and driving an old beat-up truck. It was a risky move in a conservative town, but that was Buffett's spirit, fearless and free. Eventually, he landed a record deal and quit Billboard to give music his full attention. In 1970, he released his debut album Down to Earth on Barnaby Records, a label owned by crooner Andy Williams. The album flopped, though, leaving him deep in debt, about $7,000 in the hole after trying to promote it in El Paso. Still determined, producer Buzz Cason took him to New York to hunt for another record deal, but no label was interested. At the same time, his marriage to Margie was falling apart. By then, Buffett had grown bitter toward Nashville, calling the city closed off, nepotistic, and downright frustrating. So he packed up and left for Key West, hoping to find something better. He later described that turning point vividly, leaving Nashville in the cold rain, broke, heartbroken, and uncertain about his future. His career was stalled, his marriage over, and he even had a cracked front tooth. But that drive to the warm shores of Key West would soon set the stage for the man who would become the king of the Margaritaville state of mind. How Key West transformed Jimmy Buffett forever. After stepping away from the music scene for a while, Jimmy Buffett found himself in Key West, Florida, chasing a more laid-back, carefree lifestyle. The moment he arrived, he knew he fit right in. In the early 1970s, the island was buzzing with energy, booze, drugs, and endless parties. As writer Ryan White shared in Jimmy Buffett, A Good Life All the Way, Key West was a wild playground, and Buffett dove right into it. He started writing songs everywhere, on his sailboat, in hammocks, and at bars. But success didn't come instantly. For a while, he played small gigs at a local hangout called the Chart Room, often performing for little more than tips and free drinks. He also joined a notorious social club known as Club Mandible, famous for its heavy drinking and wild nights. Buffett and his crew lived it up. Rum by day, LSD punch by night, and when they wanted a bigger rush, there was always cocaine. Despite the chaos, Buffett blended perfectly into the island life. He was funny, easygoing, and endlessly creative. White noted that if Buffett had gone to New York or Los Angeles, he might have been lost among other folk singers. But Key West? It had never seen anyone like him. The island became his blank canvas, a tropical muse filled with sunlight, salt air, and a hammock in the shade. Buffett once admitted to his artist friend Jim Harrison that he came to Key West escaping his first marriage and even bought his ticket on a bad credit card. He described the place as the farthest point one could drive in America, his ultimate escape. But it wasn't just about running away. It was about running towards something. Buffett always felt drawn to the ocean, saying he would have found a way to make a living by the sea no matter what. That pull to the water was in his blood. Key West didn't just give him peace, it gave him inspiration. The Chart Room wasn't only a stage, it was where he met Phil Clark, a real-life adventurer who seemed straight out of a movie. Clark had been everything from a mercenary soldier to an ad executive, a smuggler, and a drifter across the Virgin Islands. His wild stories of pirates, outlaws, and misfits fascinated Buffett and later inspired one of his iconic Big 8 songs, the ones fans would sing along to for decades. Even with all the tropical charm, Buffett couldn't stay still for long. He hit the road again, hitchhiking to gigs across the South, from Atlanta to New Orleans to Biloxi, before eventually circling back to Nashville. There, his new manager, Don Light, hustled to land him a record deal. But in 1972, Nashville was dominated by country legends like Dolly Parton and Porter Wagoner, and Buffett faced rejection after rejection. Light finally tried something different and sent him to perform at a booking showcase for colleges and coffee houses. It worked. Buffett started landing gigs as an opener, sometimes even performing Elvis impersonations that brought the crowd to its feet. Later that year, his luck turned. He signed a new deal with ABC Dunhill Records, marking his second chance in the music business. But even as his career began to rebound, Buffett faced temptation of another kind. In those days, Key West was a hotspot for drug smuggling, and it wasn't uncommon to see shipments unloaded right at the docks in broad daylight. Buffett later admitted that he was approached by smugglers who told him he could make more money in one delivery than he'd earned from his entire first album. It was a dangerous lure, and though he never crossed the line, he came close to that world more than once. One night, while anchored off San Salvador, Buffett had a terrifying brush with real drug runners. He'd been nursing a hangover when a fast cigarette boat pulled up, asking to use his radar. After helping them out and taking their speedboat for a spin, he spent the evening partying nearby. Later, he made the mistake of falling asleep in his dinghy. The rope slipped, and he drifted far out to sea. When he woke, he was surrounded by nothing but open water. Out of nowhere, the same drug runners appeared again, their mother ship loaded with drugs. They pointed him back toward land, and Buffett knew in that moment that if he hadn't met them earlier, he might not have survived. It was a close call, one that left him shaken and grateful, and a reminder that even in paradise, danger was never far away. The moment that changed everything. It was 1976 in Key West when Jimmy Buffett's life took a turn that would shape everything that followed. That's when he met Jane Slagsvold, a University of South Carolina student down for spring break. The connection was instant. By the next year, they were married in what Jimmy later described as a night of pure chaos and celebration. But Jane wasn't just his wife. She became the steady hand that reshaped his entire world. She stepped in and gave the Coral Reefer Band a much-needed makeover. Gone were the ripped jeans and sloppy shirts. Jane knew the band needed to look like they mattered, and she made sure of it before they hit the road again. When they found themselves in Los Angeles, they stayed at the Hyatt House on the Sunset Strip, better known in rock circles as the Riot House. The place was a madhouse. Led Zeppelin's John Bonham was reportedly riding his motorcycle down the halls, Jim Morrison had been known to hang off balconies, and the Rolling Stones were leaving destruction in their wake. In the middle of all that, Buffett sat in his room, wearing his conservative hush puppies, feeling completely out of place. He later said he felt like he was in Freak City. All he wanted was to be back in Key West with Jane. That sense of homesickness and disconnection sparked something in him. Out of that moment came one of his most personal songs, Come Monday. Buffett later admitted that he was in a dark place at the time, telling David Letterman that he was deathly depressed. When introducing the song years earlier, he'd even said it kept me from killing myself. It hit, paid the rent, and got my dog out of the pound. Come Monday wasn't just another song. It was the lifeline that changed everything. It became Buffett's first top 40 hit, reaching number 30 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 3 on the Adult Contemporary chart. The track also took off in Australia, turning him into a global name. From there, his career never looked back. The song's lyrics captured his raw emotion about being away from home and from Jane. I spent 4 lonely days in a brown LA haze, and I just want you back by my side. The you in the song was her, his girlfriend at the time, and the love he couldn't stop thinking about. Buffett loved the road, though. He thrived on performing anywhere that would have him. Bars, clubs, student halls, wherever there was a crowd. There was even a running joke that if he opened a refrigerator, he'd stand there for 10 minutes just to bask in the light. He once called himself a confirmed narcissist, saying that in those early days, you were completely on your own, so you had to make sure you were good. As the years rolled on, the Coral Reefer Band's life got louder, faster, and wilder. Cocaine became part of the lifestyle, used to keep the party alive and the shows going. Nobody thought much of it at the time. It was just part of the ride. But whenever he needed peace, Buffett escaped back to Key West, where he'd take his boat, Euphoria, out on the water. Later, when touring got too demanding, he upgraded his travels with a plane instead. Success kept pouring in. He bought a second home in Colorado, began hanging out with Hollywood's elite, and Jane was always close by. In Aspen, he played tennis with Jack Nicholson and partied with the Eagles, the very band that had influenced his own sound. At one point, Buffett even spent an afternoon with writer Hunter S. Thompson, surrounded by what was described as firearms and chemicals. Ironically, while others tried to prove they were as wild as the image suggested, Buffett secretly hated that scene. Through it all, Jane remained the grounding force in his life. But after years of chaos, she reached her breaking point. She told Time magazine she had been with Jimmy since she was practically a child and no longer knew who she was. She decided to leave, got sober, and moved to Malibu. After 6 years of marriage, they separated. 6 years later, in a twist that no one saw coming, they reconciled instead of finalizing their divorce. By 1992, they welcomed their second child, and 2 years later, they adopted a son. Buffett's life, now calmer and more centered, continued to expand. He bought a seaplane and a home in St. Bart's, joining the island's growing list of celebrity residents. But the moment that cemented Jimmy Buffett's legacy came in 1977, when he released Margaritaville. It's hard to talk about Jimmy without bringing up Margaritaville. That song wasn't just a hit. It became his signature, the anthem that built an entire lifestyle and billion-dollar brand around sun, salt, and easy living. But here's what most people don't realize. It took Buffett 8 albums to get there. Margaritaville showed up on Changes in Latitudes, Changes in Attitudes, and by that point, Buffett had already spent years trying to find his sound. He didn't do it alone either. Helping him shape that laid-back island vibe was producer Norbert Putnam, a veteran known for working with artists like Dan Fogelberg and Linda Ronstadt. Putnam had a knack for creating smooth, breezy records, and when Buffett came along, he wanted to take that energy to the ocean. Putnam later said Jimmy told him straight up, "I want to double down on making records about the ocean." So instead of Nashville or the mountains, Putnam booked studio time in Miami, right by the water. Putnam's story of how it all began is almost cinematic. He was having a meal one day when Buffett just walked up to him and said, "I gotta talk to you." The two ended up sharing drinks, and Buffett pitched this idea of making a more progressive record with his own band, the Coral Reefers. Putnam wasn't exactly thrilled. He'd just finished dealing with a similar situation and expected chaos, a bunch of musicians partying while Buffett sang about boats and his grandpa. But after thinking it over, Putnam realized there was something special in the idea. If Buffett wanted to sing about the ocean, he needed to record near the ocean. That decision led them to Miami's Criteria Studios, where they began crafting changes in latitudes, changes in attitudes. And it was there that Margaritaville was born. The funny thing is, the inspiration for the song didn't come from the beach at first. It started in Austin, Texas. According to the Austin Chronicle, Buffett came up with the margarita idea while relaxing at a Mexican restaurant, sipping the frozen concoctions that help him hang on. Later, he took the idea down to Key West and started building a story around it. One day in the studio, Buffett told Putnam about a day he'd had in Key West, how he lost a flip-flop, stepped on a beer can top, and couldn't find the salt for his margarita. He said he was turning it into a song. Putnam thought it sounded ridiculous. But a few days later, Buffett walked in with Wasted Away Again in Margaritaville, and once he played it, everyone knew it was gold. Putnam said it wasn't just a song, it was like watching a movie. That one track changed everything. It became the cornerstone of Jimmy Buffett's career and the foundation of the entire Margaritaville empire. Buffett later told Forbes that since the day he wrote it, the song had influenced just about everything he'd done. It started as a tune about a lazy day gone wrong, but it ended up defining a whole way of life. The surprising rumor Jimmy Buffett started about his own signature song. When it comes to starting rumors, Jimmy Buffett learned the hard way that sometimes people will take your jokes way too seriously. What started as a harmless, tongue-in-cheek comment ended up spreading like wildfire when Buffett joked about a legendary rock star almost recording his biggest hit, Margaritaville. Now let's pause for a second. Margaritaville isn't just another song. It's the foundation of Buffett's entire laid-back empire. The thought of anyone else performing it just sounds off, but Buffett underestimated his fans, the ever-loyal parrotheads, who tend to hang on every word he says, especially when the story involves someone as iconic as Elvis Presley. Over the years, the rumor kept circling online. Buffett had joked during an episode of CMT Crossroads that Elvis nearly recorded Margaritaville before his death. It was meant as pure fun, but the delivery was so smooth that even people in the audience weren't sure what to believe. Paul Leslie, who attended that taping, later admitted that Buffett fooled him for a moment, until Zac Brown Band's bassist threw on a pair of Elvis shades and broke into an over-the-top impression. That's when everyone caught on that Buffett was just playing around. Still, the story didn't die there. During a 60 Minutes interview, Buffett finally came clean and laughed it off, saying he made the whole thing up. He even joked that sometimes he wants to tell fans to get a life when they take these tall tales too seriously. But here's where it gets interesting, because not everyone believes he was lying. Elvis biographer Joseph A. Tunzi pointed out that there are a few coincidences that make the story oddly plausible. For instance, Elvis had a Nashville recording session planned in January 1977 that got canceled, and just a month later, Buffett released Margaritaville. On top of that, one of Elvis's bass players was also producing Buffett's albums at the time. So it's not impossible to imagine that Elvis might have at least heard about the song. Still, when you put all the pieces together, the legend doesn't quite hold up. Margaritaville may have been the perfect song for a warm beach day, but Elvis, famously more into Gatorade than margaritas, probably wasn't planning to trade his jumpsuit for flip-flops anytime soon. The flight that nearly ended everything. It was the summer of 1994, and Jimmy Buffett, singer, songwriter, businessman, and skilled pilot, was wrapping up his vacation in Nantucket, Massachusetts. On August 25th, Buffett, an experienced flyer, prepared to head home. He climbed into his twin-engine Grumman G-44 Widgeon seaplane and began taxiing out of Mataket Harbor on the island's west side. The plan was simple: take off, enjoy the view, and head back to the mainland. But things didn't go as planned. As he started his takeoff run, Buffett's plane suddenly hit an unexpected wave, a swell that caught him completely off guard. Later, when he spoke to the National Transportation Safety Board, he recalled spotting what he called contrary water out of the corner of his eye. He tried to cut the power, but it was too late. The plane veered sharply to the right and moments later, nosedived into the water before capsizing. Witnesses said it looked terrifying. a Nantucket police officer reported that Buffett's plane had barely lifted off before plunging straight into the harbor. But this wasn't just any pilot in trouble. This was a man who'd trained for moments like this. Years earlier, Buffett had completed survival training with the U.S. Navy, and that training kicked in fast. He jumped from the sinking plane and swam away as it went under. Luckily, a nearby boat spotted him and pulled him to safety. He was taken to a local hospital for evaluation, but aside from some pain, he walked away unharmed. Buffett's ability to stay calm wasn't luck. It was the result of preparation. Back in 1986, 8 years before the accident, he had spent a week at the Naval Aviation Survival School in Norfolk, Virginia. The training was no joke. It included underwater escape simulations, where trainees were flipped upside down in mock helicopter crashes and had to find their way out. Buffett completed that course so he could legally fly in an F-14 Tomcat launched from an aircraft carrier. During that time, Navy pilots from the 45th Advisory Group in Key West even gave him a nickname, Brillo, thanks to his hair. Fast forward to 1994, and that same training likely saved his life. Beyond that, Buffett had logged an impressive 1,500 hours of flight time, more than 62 days worth of flying. That included 400 hours in multi-engine aircraft and 190 specifically in his Grumman Widgeon, the same plane that went down. He wasn't a hobbyist, he was a certified commercial pilot, having earned his license at 39. Over the years, he owned several aircraft, including a Falcon 900, Falcon 50, and Cessna 208 Caravan. The investigation found no mechanical failure. The weather was clear, the engines were fine. It was simply an unfortunate encounter with the unpredictable nature of the sea. The NTSB's final report described the plane as substantially damaged. Buffett, though, walked away, shaken but alive, thanks to experience and instinct. But that wasn't his last brush with danger in the sky. 2 years later, in 1996, Buffett found himself in an even more surreal situation, one that could have ended far worse. He was flying his seaplane, the Hemisphere Dancer, into Negril, Jamaica. On board were his wife Jane, their daughter Sarah Delaney, music producer Chris Blackwell, and U2's lead singer Bono with his family. As they approached for landing, shots suddenly rang out. Authorities mistook them for drug smugglers and opened fire. Buffett later told Rolling Stone that he initially thought it was a joke, until he heard bullets hitting the plane. They were surrounded by a Jamaican SWAT team, guns drawn. 2 bullets tore through the Hemisphere Dancer, leaving holes that he later had to repair. The whole thing could have ended in tragedy. Bono later admitted that he genuinely thought they were all going to die, calling it one of the most terrifying moments of his life. Buffett, in typical fashion, turned the ordeal into art. He wrote a song about it titled Jamaica Mistaka, recounting how they were mistaken for smugglers when, in reality, they were just hungry tourists looking for some chicken. Despite the chaos, Buffett stayed calm, more worried about his family than the damage. "You can't believe the relief I felt when I saw the kids were okay," he said afterward. The Jamaican government eventually apologized, and Buffett immortalized the bizarre event with humor and grace in Jamaica Mistaka, released that same year. Through it all, he proved what fans already knew. Whether it was flying, surviving, or storytelling, Jimmy Buffett always found a way to turn near disaster into one unforgettable tale, the leap that nearly cost his life. In 2011, during a concert in Sydney, Australia, Jimmy Buffett had a moment fans will never forget. As he wrapped up his performance, he leaned forward to greet the crowd, doing what he always did best, connecting with his audience. But those bright stage lights had completely blinded him, and before anyone could react, Jimmy took one wrong step and vanished right over the edge of the stage. The crowd gasped. For a few seconds, everything froze. Then chaos broke out. But right there among the fans was Professor Gordian Fould, director of St. Vincent's Hospital Emergency Department. He had come to enjoy the show with his wife, and suddenly, less than 10 feet away, his favorite musician had just fallen hard onto a narrow space below the stage. Professor Fould later described the moment vividly. It was like watching a scene out of a cartoon, with Buffett suspended in midair before plummeting down. But the laughter stopped when reality hit. Jimmy struck his head on the edge of a metal box, twisting awkwardly as he hit the ground. The professor heard a sickening thud, one that only comes with a serious head injury. When he rushed over, Buffett was pale, motionless, and curled up. For a terrifying moment, Fooled thought he might not be breathing. Without hesitation, the doctor vaulted over the barrier, identified himself to security, and immediately began treating him. Carefully supporting his neck, he managed to straighten Jimmy's body just enough to help him breathe again. Despite the blood from a deep scalp wound, the doctor noted that Buffett still had a strong pulse and stable circulation. Small but promising signs. Jimmy was quickly taken to St. Vincent's Hospital, where Fulda stayed by his side. Doctors ran a series of tests on his spine and neck, even bringing in a neurosurgeon to make sure there was no brain injury. It was a tense night for everyone, but by the next morning, the results came back clear. Jimmy was in surprisingly good shape. He needed just a few stitches, but there were no long-term effects from the fall. And in true Jimmy Buffett fashion, the story didn't end with bed rest. Ignoring doctors' orders to take it easy, he boarded a chartered flight to New Zealand soon after being discharged. And before anyone knew it, he was back on stage doing what he loved most. Jimmy Buffett's Autopsy has finally been released, and it's bad. In May 2023, Jimmy Buffett found himself facing a health scare that landed him in a Boston hospital. Even while recovering, the legendary Margaritaville singer stayed true to his easygoing spirit, sharing a heartfelt message with fans. In a note posted online, Buffett explained that what began as a simple checkup turned into something more serious, forcing him to postpone his Charleston, South Carolina show with the Coral Reefer Band. He opened his message with a line from Mark Twain about how challenges make life interesting, but overcoming them makes life meaningful, setting the tone for what was to come. Buffett described how just days earlier he'd returned from a Bahamas trip, excited to get back on stage. But life had other plans. In his signature honest way, he admitted that growing older was no joke, calling it not for sissies, yet quickly followed that with a promise. Once he was back on his feet, he'd return to performing in the Land of She-Crab Soup, his affectionate nickname for Charleston. His message took a sentimental turn as he reflected on his journey, from a tow-headed boy on the Gulf of Mexico to a beloved performer playing for millions. He thanked fans for their loyalty, their prayers, and their love throughout his career, signing off with a defiant reminder of his fighting spirit. Not yet. Just a few months later, on September 1, 2023, the world lost Jimmy Buffett. His official website revealed that he had quietly been battling a rare and aggressive illness called Merkel cell carcinoma for 4 years. It's a little-known type of skin cancer that often appears as a small bump on the face, head, or neck. Despite the diagnosis, Buffett continued performing, with his final show taking place in Rhode Island in July 2023. In the wake of his passing, his sister Lori Buffett McGuane described him as endlessly upbeat, funny, and creative, even through his toughest days. She said he never lost his humor or his joy for life, staying true to who he was until the end. Lori shared that the siblings spent those last days reminiscing about their childhood, laughing over old memories as Jimmy nodded along, remembering every story. Heartbreakingly, the Buffett family had been fighting 2 battles at once. Lori revealed that she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer shortly after Jimmy learned of his own illness in 2019. When he heard the news, he brought the entire family, and even the dogs, to Montana to be by her side. The two stayed close throughout their treatments, offering each other support during the pandemic, when their health made them especially vulnerable. Lori eventually recovered, but Jimmy's battle ended differently. Reflecting on their shared experience, she said they were part of a club no one ever wants to join. She was devastated that her brother didn't make it, remembering how much it hurt him to cancel shows, especially that Charleston concert in May 2023. Even then, he kept his trademark wit alive, reminding everyone that growing old truly wasn't for the faint of heart.